We are here at the Shul.com podcast at Surfside Kolel Boker, and we are learning from the laws of Shabbat. It's a two-set book from Rabbi Yonatan Nacson, and we are discussing the costs of Shabbat, page 48. Number 13. Even though one's livelihood for the year is determined on Rosh Hashanah, the Gemara states that money that is spent on Shabbat expenses do not detract from the money that was allotted to him on Rosh Hashanah. And that's brought down in Pesikta, the Rav Kahana, states that Hashem will repay a person for whatever he spends in the honor of Shabbat. It's also in Midrash Rabbah and Vayikra 30, who adds that this is also the case for one who spends on Rosh Chodesh. Mishnah Berurah 242-4 quotes the Tur, who says that this also includes what one spends for Yom Tov, or money spent on providing one's children with Torah education. The costs that are repaid include money. Number one, money which was spent on having guests on Shabbat. Okay. Number two, even clothing that one buys in order to honor Shabbat is considered part of the cost of Shabbat. Number three, the cost of water and electricity that one uses for Shabbat. Number four, even the cost of preparing for Shabbat, such as traveling and bathing, that will all be returned back to the person. So the famous Ma'amar of Chamavajah that Cham David Yosef reminded me when I was with him, it says, Mezenotav shel adam kitzuvim lo mitishrei ad tishrei chutz mitishrei, that the parnasah of a person is determined from the month of Tishrei until Tishrei, but not Tishrei the actual month. So the pshat of that is that, yes, the entire year is determined except for the month itself, which is determined on an ongoing basis. Rosh Hashanah by Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Yom Kippur, Hashanah Rabbah, and all the other holidays determined as the month goes along. The other explanation of Chamavajah was Tishrei at Tishrei chutz mitishrei, that from the month of Tishrei to the month of Tishrei, but not the month of Tishrei, is the letters of Tishrei, which is Tav, Shin, Resh, and Yud. Tav is Talmud Torah, Shin is Shabbat, Resh is Rosh Chodesh, and Yud is Yom Tov. So you have those four times that is not included in the amount of money that you're going to get from God, which means that if God determined that you're going to make $1 million a year, and this guy spent $500,000 on the Tishrei, Talmud Torah, Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, Yom Tov. This guy goes all out. It goes on every trip, Sukkot, Shavuot, Pesach, Hanukkah. This guy, when it comes to Shabbatons, he goes all out. So God says, all right, I determined you $1 million. You determined 500 on that expense of the Tishri. So in that case, it's 1.5 million at the end of the year that he'll get. Suddenly, at the end of the year, he makes a be'ah, he makes a big sale, and suddenly he gets his extra $500,000 back. So that's one of the great benefits of spending for Shabbat. Number 14, one who cannot afford food for Shabbat is permitted to borrow money, even if it's lent on interest, if it's ribit de Rabbanan. Wow. That's brought down from the Magen Avraham and Chazon Avajah and the Leviat Hen and Halichot Olam. Okay, number 15, it is proper to honor the Shabbat by having meat, wine, and other special dishes. However, one is not obligated to buy more than one can afford. Okay, so a person has to buy the things that he could afford, not the things that he cannot afford. And Sefer Chasidim states that one should not buy an expensive item for Shabbat, that if doing so will lead to an argument with one's spouse. So if going out and spending money that he doesn't have would cause him to have mahloket at home with his wife, the Sefer Chasidim says don't do it. And he shouldn't spend more than he can afford. Obviously, a person knows what he can afford. He knows where his status is. Number 16, it is customary to buy flowers in the honor of Shabbat. So let's take a look at the source for that. That's from the Sidur of the Ya'abetz. It's also brought down the Kaf HaChaim Palachi, who specifies that one should bring roses. Specifically, so if you're buying flowers for Shabbat, according to the Kaf HaChaim Palachi, bring roses. See also Yalkut Yosef Shabbat, who states that if one is placing the flowers on the table, one should be cautious that bugs should not fall from the flowers onto one's food. Okay, so let's be careful on that. Let's go to tasting the Shabbat food. Number 17, since there is a mitzvah to eat good tasting food on Shabbat, one should taste the food before Shabbat in order to ensure that it is not lacking anything. That's what they say, To'amea Hayim Zachu, that people who taste the food for Shabbat, they have life, they gain life. Shibuleh Haleket, and the Beit Yosef and Machzor Vitri state that one who tastes the food on Erev Shabbat merits a long life. But To'amea, the one who tastes it, Hayim Zachu, they end up getting Hayim. See also Chazon Avajah, and also the Ben Ish Hai says one should have only a small taste of each item. Okay. Obviously, having a whole full meal is not permitted, as we'll soon see in the future. Number 18, when tasting the food that is for Shabbat, one does not have to recite a beracha upon tasting, even if he swallows. However, if one eats a kazayit of food or a revi'it of liquid, then one must recite a beracha. In order to be obligated in reciting a beracha, one should have intention to benefit from the food, even when he is only tasting a very small amount. So if you're just tasting, you don't need a beracha. If you're going to taste it and also want to enjoy that little piece, then make a beracha or have the portion that would require you. 19. When the fast of the 10th of Tevet is on a Friday, Asara b'Tevet, one may taste the Shabbat food without reciting a beracha and spit it out, but one may not swallow it. So if he has to taste it to make sure that it doesn't need any extra salt or seasonings or spices, he can taste it, but he would have to spit it out, and obviously he's spitting it out, so he does not make a beracha on it. Number 20, when one may even taste the meat or chicken prepared for Shabbat on Erev Shabbat Hazon to ensure that it is not lacking anything. Likewise, one may taste the Shabbat food on the 10th of Av, which there is a restriction for eating meat on the 10th of Av, but he can taste the food. Let's look at the notes on the bottom here. In 25, on Ashrei Ha'ish, states that in the name of Rav Yosef Shalom Eliashiv, that one should not taste any meat food for Shabbat. However, many poskim, such as the Rivot Ephraim, state that one may taste the food but should immediately spit it out afterwards. Or the Tzion states that one who regularly tastes the food of Erev Shabbat may taste and even swallow. That's Or the Tzion, volume 3, 26-4. See also Torah Muadim Ben HaMitzrayim, page 184, who states that even though it is permitted to taste the food on Erev Shabbat, it is better to refrain from doing so on Shabbat Hazon. However, Chacham Ovadia Yosef and Chazon Ovadia Arba Taniyot, page 175, does not write that it is better to refrain from tasting. So, with that being said, you could taste on Erev Shabbat Hazon and also on the 10th of Av, as brought down by Chacham Ovadia. So he's very clear. He saw all the sources and he permitted it. 21. Before Shabbat, it is permitted to eat the food from the food that was prepared for Shabbat, provided that one ensures that there will be enough food remaining for Shabbat. So you have to be careful. If the guy starts to eat the food and suddenly he took 60 or 70% of the food and didn't leave enough, that would be a problem. Let's go to baking challah. Number 22. Part of the mitzvah of honoring the Shabbat is to make a dough on Erev Shabbat that is large enough to be able to fulfill the mitzvah of hafrashat challah. Also, there is a mitzvah. He brings it down. Let's look at 28. The Ramah 242-1, the Darkei Moshe 603-1 states that this custom was actually instituted by Ezra HaSofed. However, the Magen Avraham 242-4 states that it is learned from the Gemara in Ta'ani 24a from the custom of the wife of Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa. Okay, Mishnah Berurah 242-6 states that a woman should do the Hafashat Challah in order to atone for the sin of Hava, who came into being on Friday. And he also brings down the Shivat Zion. Okay, the amount of flour that must be used in order to fulfill this mitzvah is 1,560 grams, or 1.56 kilograms of flour. Let's take a look at 29, what he says here. He brings down Chazon Ovadia, Yalkut Yosef, adds that if it has 1,404 grams of flour, then hafrasha should be performed without reciting a beracha. So the number for hafrashat challah, according to the Sefer here, is 1,560 grams. One only has to separate a minute amount for the mitzvah of hafrashat challah, and it should then be set aside and burned, as brought down in Halichot Olam. Okay, so that's what you do with the leftover of the challah. 23. If one does not have enough time to complete all of the preparations on Friday, including breaking challah, then it's better to do the other preparations on Thursday and have time to bake the challah specifically on Friday. And then the Bi'ur Halacha says it's better for one to bake their own challah than to buy it from the bakery. Also brought down in the Or Tzion and Halacha Berurah. 24. It is better to make a lot of challahs in order to perform hafrashat challah, even if one does not need so much and will have to freeze the remaining challah for later weeks. Okay, so that's another important point. And the Shraga HaMeir adds that when warming up the challah in later weeks, one should say that she is doing so, or he's doing so in honor of Shabbat. 25. One who is generally lenient to eat bread which was baked by a non-Jew should be stringent on Shabbat to only eat bread which was baked by a Jew. So if he eats from Pat Akum, he should avoid it on Shabbat and eat Pat Israel. That's brought down the Magen Abraham, Mishnah Berurah, Kaf HaChaim, Halachot Olam, and many others. Doing laundry on Erev Shabbat. 26. The Chachamim institute that one should wash the laundry on Thursday or any other day preceding Friday, in order that one will be able to focus on Friday with the preparations of Shabbat. However, since nowadays the laundry is washed with the washing machine and is not as time-consuming as washing by hand, one may even wash his clothes on Friday. And he brings down a lot of proofs here. Let's take a look at this. There's a big footnote. 34, he brings down Talmud Bavli, Shabbat 82a, and Shulchan Aruch 242-1 that stated Ezra Sofer instituted that one should wash his clothing in honor of Shabbat on Thursday before Shabbat. Magen Avraham 242-3 states that the main institution of Ezra was not that one must wash his clothing, since despite his institution there is already a mitzvah to wear clean clothing on Shabbat. Rather, the purpose of the institution was that one should wash his clothing on Thursday as opposed to washing it on Friday, in order that one will have more time on Friday to focus on the preparations for Shabbat. See also the Pri Megadim, the Eliyah Rabbah. On the other hand, state that all Ezra intended was that laundry not be left for Friday, lest it disrupt the Shabbat preparations, but not that one needs to make a point specifically of laundering specifically on Thursday. So there's different ways of how they understood this takana. See the Mishnah Berurah 242-5, Machazik HaShekel, who reconciles that the Magen Abraham with the rest of the Acharonim. In any case, most poskim agree that it all depends on how much time one has. And if one is able to do the laundry and properly prepare for Shabbat, then there is no issue to do the laundry on Friday. For more on the subject, see Chazon Avadja on Shabbat, volume 1, page 24. You have Halachot Odam, Halacha Berurah, Or Letzion, and Mishneh Halachot. It is preferable, to do the laundry on Thursday. We said that. Number 28. Even when washing by hand, one may wash his clothing on Friday if he has no other clothing for Shabbat. So if he's stuck and that's all he's got, he can do it by hand even. 29. Suits or pants which can be worn repeatedly without becoming dirty are not required to be cleaned on a weekly basis. Okay, sometimes a guy has a suit, it doesn't always get dirty, it stays clean. It doesn't have to be washed on a weekly basis just because Shabbat's coming. If it stayed in good condition, then it doesn't seemingly need it. It's brought down here, Ben Ish Chai Lech Lecha 2-6, Kaf HaChaim 242-21, Or Letzion Volume 2, 16-2. Even though the Mishnah Berurah 242-5 points out that it is implied in the institution of Ezra that one must wear clean clothing every Shabbat, his intention was only for garments which are soiled, such as undergarments. Garments which are generally kept clean, such as a suit, do not have to be cleaned on a weekly basis. So that's the review of the Halachot Shabbat. And we will continue on this in the next coming days. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen v'amen.